Hi there.
Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. How are you this morning?
Good. I love your hair.
Oh, thanks. I ended up damaging, just going to shut these blinds because they're just off my glasses. I ended up damaging it with the product I tried, and then I tried to curl over top of it, and it totally destroyed my hair. So my daughter had to cut off like a ton.
Oh.
Thanks. It's definitely easier. The less hair there is, the easier it is to take care of, right? Okay, it's just going to be you and me today. Julie texted me and said she wasn't going to make it.
Okay.
So how did you like the book so far?
Good.
Yeah?
I've kind of like skimmed over stuff because
Yeah.
I just am like, yeah. I've been there, done that. I'm done with dieting. I know that. So I think I'm in chapter 3 so far.
Okay, great. So you've been able to get through the intro, chapter 1, chapter 2.
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, that's what I want to talk about today a little bit. So tell me about your week, though. You said that you had more successes. You're starting to feel emotionally better. Tell me about it.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm kind of nervous because, it's the whole diet mentality. When you first start something, everything's great and you do it right and it's going well. And, after a week, it doesn't work anymore. So I'm a little bit leery.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have been trying this on and off since we've been working together more recently, so, I've started eating sugar. It's been before we started this From Food to Faith program. So I've kind of been heading in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I feel like like you said, you just have to keep trying and keep practicing. And I just feel like I'm more aware. It's not always like this morning. I overate. I was eating a Costco chocolate muffin, but I was aware. I was like, I'm overeating. I'm going to finish this muffin, even though I'm already satisfied. And I was just like, that's interesting. I just,
and the thing is, you have permission to eat the whole muffin. Just because you get to the point where you feel like you've had enough doesn't mean you have to stop. It's all about what you want to choose to do at that point, right?
Yeah. And emotionally, I don't know. I don't know what you believe, but I believe that hormones has a lot to do with our.
Oh, absolutely. We know that.
Everything,
Yeah.
And so is this recording?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Okay. And only Julie's going to listen to it?
Yeah. It just goes on our private page. The only people that ever have access to that page are people who pay for the program.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just tell you and everybody else who wants to hear. So I think I've told you this. I think I'm starting menopause. So I went for 2.5 months without a period, and then I had one. I was like, whoa, where did this come from?
Mm-hmm.
And I just felt like a brand new person. I was like, wow, I didn't think I'd ever be grateful for a period.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's all that hormonal stuff, like, wow, I feel so much better. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it either, but I just feel good. I mean, even though there's still the same trials happening, I feel better. I have a better attitude. I've been reading the Book of Mormon. That's where a lot of my points have been coming from too.
Good.
Reading and listening to the Book of Mormon. So I've been getting between 4 and 6 points a day just from that.
Good. That's awesome.
So I know that's helping, and I think it's just a combination of, all of it.
That's awesome, because this is all about finding peace, right? That's the end goal, is finding peace. And our bodies have been kind of a battleground for so long. And the idea is to stop warring there. But if people think that that's the end goal, they'll be sorely disappointed. It's like when my father-in-law stopped drinking and thought he was successful, and his family was still falling apart because he needed to change the things about himself that he'd been covering up with alcohol, right? That took a lot longer. And just like this, it took practice. It took trying to, discover when he was doing something that needed to be changed. And, life is just a process, all in all. And, you said something at the beginning that I think is really important to address. Sorry, my hair is going to always fall in my face now because it's short. Anyway, you said it's hard to trust it because it feels like another diet. Mm-hmm. And that's so common. And it's talked about in this book. It's talked about in all of Janine Roth's books. It just feels like another gimmick, mm-hmm. right? But that's why it's important to me to tie it back into what God created, right? For me, God is the definitive source of truth, right? And so that's why when I was going crazy with dieting, and I want to be like, what is the right way? There's mm-hmm. got to be a way that you want me to eat. There's got to be a way that you think I should act or be. And I can't trust any of these advertisers. I can't trust, there's a million people on Facebook trying to sell me their shake or their protein or their whatever. Who do I trust? And that's why for me, it came down to God and my study of, okay, God is the one that, when does God want me to eat? Duh, when I'm hungry. Yeah. That's a no duh, right? When does he want me to stop? When my body says, you've had enough, right? What size should I be? He could give a crap. He doesn't care. He doesn't talk about that, but he does want you to actually take care of your body and live a vibrant, full, happy life. So what does that take? Well, we know it takes movement, it takes taking care of your body. It takes, getting sleep. It takes all that stuff. And then the scriptures are full of relying on him for the rest of the stuff, not using anything, food or money or whatever, for our peace and our happiness. So it's very, very basic, right? Mm-hmm. And like I said, when I first discovered this book was when I was studying that clear back in the mid 1990s. And I was just stunned because I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I've been learning. And I actually went to the temple to pray about it because I did not trust it at all. And the interesting thing is I did get a very strong feeling that it was kind of like a no duh. This was only explaining what was natural in the world, right? Mm-hmm. There's nothing in there that says to do anything contrary to what he says. Right. So that's why I felt good about it. But isn't it interesting that it took me 20 more years to do it? Mm-hmm. 20 more years. Here I knew I had my answer. It made perfect sense to me, and I still didn't trust it at all. And it wasn't that I didn't trust it. It's that I didn't trust myself at all to follow it. I did it for maybe like 6 weeks. And as soon as I fell off the wagon, so to speak, like there's not even a wagon to fall off of, guys. We're just trying to get back to normal. But as soon as I binged again, I immediately went, you know what, I can't do that. That's, it's the same thing. And I went right back to my regular dieting stuff. Instead of saying, oh, okay, man, I went back to trusting, food to take care of me right then. What was that about? And learning from that and going back to it. And I think, man, if I had just stuck to it back then and practiced it, so what if it took me 2 or 3 years to master? I would have been 17 years ahead of the game, right? And that was the other problem. What's that?
But you wouldn't be helping me now.
I don't know. Maybe I would have started this a long time ago. I have no idea. But, it's just interesting that it took me a very, very long time to trust myself mm-hmm. and to get rid of the emotional garbage that I was numbing with food. That was really the key for me. And so that's why in this program, I really want it to include all of the above. It's like gotta be, the basis has to be however God says it is, that's what we're aiming for. And then we try to figure out what is in our way of doing that. What's getting in the way? And there's tons. And hormones play into it. Sleep plays into it. Your family dynamics that week. Some weeks we have really close, happy family time. And other weeks we're like, I don't even know if I want to be together forever. Like, you're all driving me crazy. So it all plays into it. So you don't have to figure out, I feel great and it must be because of this or this. Our lives are just a combination of everything, right?
Yeah.
So if we can think of this as, this is simply a process of getting more enjoyment and peace and fulfillment out of our life, right? In all areas. And let them go together, right? All truth goes together.
Yep.
You can't really divide one from the other. So I'm really glad to hear though that you're feeling better. That's just so helpful. And when hormones are out of whack, oh my gosh, there's nothing worse than a hormonal woman, especially if you're the hormonal woman, right? You just make me so mad when everybody else would be like, oh, she's just like hormonal. And I'd be like, yeah, and you're the problem. I'm going to get rid of you. Okay, so let's take a few minutes and let's go through these three, the intro and chapter 1 and chapter 2. I've got some notes here, but we can go off on whatever tangent we feel like going on.
Okay.
But I love in the introduction where it talks about their history, because these are dietitians and nutritionists. I looked up all of their credentials, and they are like certified eating disorder registered dietitian. I forgot what FADA means, but they're serious nutritionists and dietitians, right? And they don't really talk about their own issues with weight at all. So I don't even know if they ever really struggled themselves. My experience has been that most nutritionists I know have struggled, and that's kind of why they chose that area, but they don't really talk about that. We know at one point that one of them is a competitive marathon runner. So we know they're really into fitness and that kind of thing. And so for me, that could be a sign that I don't want to take them as seriously. Kind of like, well, maybe you don't know what it's like.
Yeah.
You know? And so I appreciated that they shared that when they first started with their clients, they were doing what every nutritionist does. They say, here's your plan. You can exchange, it's an exchange thing. So you can choose this many proteins and this many this. And even they were using the phrase, this is not a diet, right? But it was exactly a diet. But even they didn't think it was. And everybody was successful until they went home after succeeding, and then they came back having quote unquote failed. And so I really appreciated them putting that in there, that they were baffled and they were like, okay, what do we do? And then even them sharing that that they were kind of running into an emotional quandary themselves, like, how do we promote what we know is true and yet knowing that it doesn't work? Right? So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
So there's this part in here in their history where they say they were concerned about like that whole forget nutrition thing that was coming out. It was like, forget nutrition, just eat whatever you want. And they were worried about that because they're like, okay, but at some point it is going to affect your body and you need to have nutrients, you need to have all that. So how do we put it together? And I love where they said, it's on page Roman numeral 21, XXI, and it says, concerned about the forget nutrition argument since our bodies need to be cared for. And then they said, it discounts the respect for one's body that comes along with the gift of life. And I love that, because to me, that ties in the spiritual part where I don't think our worth changes at all in Heavenly Father's eyes when we're 500 pounds or 150 pounds. But I do think he's sad when he sees how limited we are, or how much we limit our lives and our happiness and our health and all that stuff. Just like I would be if I saw my kids, I would love them no matter what, but I'll be sad if I see that they can't do certain things because of the choices they're making.
Yeah.
So I like that. How does that match up with your beliefs about your body?
Well, I've been, talking to myself and trying to be grateful for my body, and I love my body and all the things that I can do. I just don't know if deep down I really believe that.
Believing it, right. And that's okay, because changing a belief takes challenging it every time it comes up.
Yeah.
You can't challenge it once and expect that you suddenly will stop believing it. But if you challenge it every time it comes up, if you made a habit of every time you had a disparaging thought about your body to pick one quick part of your body and just recognize what it's doing for you right then, right? The end of my pointer finger. I can pick things up. My fingernail protects it from pain when something falls on it. I can paint it red and then it looks pretty. I can, if I didn't have it, if it were cut off today, what would I miss being able to do? If you spent 30 seconds doing that and then move on with your day, you would have interrupted that original thought, right?
Mhm.
the negative thought, and replaced it with a positive thought about your body, and then just moved on.
Okay.
And if we did that every single time we had oh my gosh, I hate my stomach, you know,
Yeah.
you could have a thought about your stomach itself, like, oh my gosh, I've given birth to 5 kids. That's amazing. Amazing. And it's never going to look like it did before I gave birth to kids, but I would never trade those kids for anything, and move on.
Okay.
Or you could, if you can't think of anything nice about that, think about your big toe.
Point over here.
Yeah. So I think it's a matter of changing that thought. I had a dietitian years ago when I was in an eating disorder group, and she was fantastic, and she definitely was part of the intuitive eating clan. And she gave a really good example. She gave me a marble to hold on to and to stick in my pocket. And she said, I want you to imagine that your habits are like a big hill of sand. And at the top of the hill is your marble. And when you roll it down, what happens in the sand?
The indent
Yeah,
line.
teeny tiny indent, right? Now, if you put your marble up there and you roll it down that same indent over and over and over and over, what's going to happen?
Let me get deeper.
Yeah, much deeper. And you won't have to worry about that marble ever rolling outside of that dent, right? It's not going to. Every time you put it up there, it's going to go right down that spot. It says you're trying to get it to roll down a different part of the hill, and it's going to want to go right back into that rut. And so you're trying to roll it down a different side of the hill. If it falls in the rut, pick it up at the bottom, put it back on the other part of the rut, and let it roll down again. And the first time you do it, it's not going to create a deep rut. The second time, it's not going to be a deep rut. You may not even notice the difference between the first time, the second time, the 10th time, the 20th time. But as you keep doing it, it's getting deeper and deeper. And while you're more consistent with the new rut, what's happening to the old one?
Going away.
Yeah, it's sand, right? So the winds and basic stuff of life is going to start blowing it around, and pretty soon you won't even know it was ever there. But that takes time too.
Okay.
Right? So think about that as every time you do something positive, no matter how little it is, it's rolling that marble down the new part of the hill. And it's okay. And that's perfect. That's the only way you're going to ever create that new divot in the new part of the hill.
Okay.
Okay. The patient comments at the end, right? Let me see. Yeah. It's still page 21.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What did you think about those?
It was good. I was like, yeah, okay. I can still do this. I know this is going to happen. If you have a binge, it can actually be a great thing. Right?
I like it because, and here's why I like using this book in this program, because this is a brand new program that we're creating, but it's based on something that's been around for many, many years and has thousands of success stories. Thousands and thousands, right? And what they do then is they go train other dietitians and coaches, and I may even go take their course, and they certify other people to teach it. And they have clients that all have success, and it's a very well-known, scientifically proven fact that it works. In fact, when you get to the end of chapter 17, if you want to sneak over there at some point, chapter 17 is all about the scientific proof that's out there. And it's tons and tons and tons of studies that have been done since this first came out. And so when you start thinking this is just a diet, when your brain wants to tell you that, just remember it's so not a diet. And there is nothing to rebel against once you get it down. Nothing, because you're enjoying it more. You're enjoying your food more. You're enjoying your life more. Like, it's easier. The more you do it, the easier it gets, not the harder it gets.
Right.
Whereas on a diet, the more you do it, the harder it gets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I still have in the back of my mind the weight loss too, which I know they say you have to, not
put it on the back burner.
Yeah.
I like that they say you have to put it on the back burner and not you have to forget about it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because they're saying, no, it matters. Like it's in the plan that you need to take care of your body and get it a healthy weight. But they're just saying if that's your focus, you're completely undermining yourself all the time. And so maybe every time it comes to your mind, because it still comes to my mind, right? I think it will until we get to a point where we're totally comfortable, right?
Yeah.
But every time it does, maybe imagine your head actually putting it on the back burner, right? Sometimes you want to just keep something warm back there. picture putting it down and putting on the very lowest setting, be like, okay, you hold tight, we're getting to you.
Yeah.
But I'm working on this right now.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I can't wait till we get to the chapter on general nutrition, because nutrition is important, but until we learn to trust ourselves, one don't ever get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that. And then the last thing in the introduction was that intuitive eating versus mindful eating. Did you understand the difference, what they were trying to say there?
I think so. I can't remember.
Well, it says that the Center for Mindful Eating states that mindfulness eating includes allowing yourself to become aware of the positive and nurturing opportunities that are available through food preparation and consumption, blah, blah, blah. In other words, think of it this way. Mindful eating is being completely present in the process, right? So they're saying you could actually enjoy, planning the food, preparing the food, cooking the food, and eating the food, that you should enjoy the whole process of food. And choosing food that is pleasing to you and nourishing to your body by using all your senses to explore, savor, and taste. I mean, most of the time we don't do that, right? I have to consciously make myself do it still. It's hard for me to sit down and don't multitask. That's my problem. So I have to force myself to sit there and don't look at my phone and don't read a book and just enjoy the food. But it's amazing that when I do it, I'm like, ooh, I really did enjoy that a lot more. So now I'm really committed to doing it that way whenever possible, because I really do enjoy the meal a lot more when I do it. At first, it was just a rule that I was trying to follow. Mm-hmm. And now it's like, oh no, I really will enjoy it more if I can sit down for a minute. And then acknowledging responses to food. So like if I have a daughter who hates fruit, like has always hated fruit from the day she was born. If I would eat a banana in the car and she was like old enough to reach her nose, she would be at the back with her nose plugged. She hates all fruit, but she adores vegetables, adores them. When she was like 2, I would take her to Subway and get her the kids sandwich where they just put meat and cheese. And then I would load mine with like sprouts and tomatoes and onions and blah, blah, blah. And she would be eating my sandwich and leaving hers alone the whole time. And finally I had to start ordering the kids sandwich with vegetables because she was snarfing my sandwich every time. But, at first when she was little, we're like, just try it. Just have this, just have that. I'm sure if you tried it, you'd like it. And after like years, it became very clear, no, she hates it. Stop shoving it down her throat. She eats plenty of other healthy stuff. And when we learned to relax about it, it didn't become a big deal. And she's a very healthy eater. But sometimes to ourselves, we're like, well, it's time to have a salad. You need to have a salad when you want to vomit at the thought of another salad, right? Mm-hmm. So mindful eating is just that ability to be completely present in the moment, to enjoy it, focus on it. If you don't like it, know that, stop doing it. That's mindful eating. Intuitive eating really includes mindful eating. And then it's basically it also, mindful eating addresses the issues of cognitive distortions and emotional eating. So it's also recognizing that we eat for other reasons. It includes seeing satisfaction as a focal point in eating, physical activity, movement for the sake of feeling good. So it also works on mindful exercise, mindful movement, right? Rejecting the diet mentality, using nutrition information without judgment. So they're saying you can use nutrition information just to get information about what you're eating, but you don't turn it into a moral issue that I'm a good person or a bad person. And respecting your body, regardless of how you feel about its shape. I'm going to use just a second to share with you the word respect. To me, this was a huge discovery for me. I may have blogged about it at some point. In fact, maybe I should blog about it again. That's one of my favorite things. But it's important because we talk about respecting our body a lot. So respect, you have 2 parts of the word. And spect, think of spectacle, right? Spect means to look. Okay. Means to do it again. So when you respect something, you think about it again. So if I'm respecting, let's say I want to go to a specific restaurant tonight and that's all I care about. If I'm going to respect my husband's wishes, who's going with me, that means I'm going to think about, will he want to go there? Or maybe he has a different idea. I should think about that, right? I'm going to respect his wishes. So if we're going to respect our body, that means we have to actually think about it and think about how this is going to affect it. If I say, I have a meal planned at noon and I'm not going to eat until that meal, and your body at 11 is growling to the point where you can't think of other things and you're starving, and you just say to the body, well, shut up, I'll feed you when it's time, right? That's not thinking about the needs of your body. That's not respecting your body. If you can say, oh man, my body really needs to eat right now, and you're thinking about the needs, that's respecting your body, right? So respecting your body doesn't mean I love the shape it's in all the time. I love the way I have 3,000 stretch marks on my stomach, right? You know, nobody's going to sit and look at that, but I can respect it and say, wow, it got me 5 children. Or, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of ways you can think about your body and its needs and be mindful of that. And then you've respected yourself. So don't think of it as meaning, it just means you have to love everything about it and the way it looks. Okay. Okay. Let's look at chapter 1.
Okay.
Chapter 1, hitting diet bottom. We all know that too well. We talk about how it ruins metabolism. I have not always believed that. I kind of thought that was one more thing people were telling us, you know, to get us to do whatever they wanted us to do. But it's interesting, as I've been reading more studies, we're looking at a lot of the studies that are listed in this book. And then I found one that was just fascinating. And did I already tell you about the Biggest Loser study?
I don't remember.
Okay, it's really, really cool. In fact, I should send you the link. If I forget, I'll send you the link. Although, okay, don't read the actual study, read the summary, because the study itself it was crazy technical and it was not fun to read. But what they did is they took the winners of The Biggest Loser, and it was 6 years after the show, right? So all the winners, and then they were at least 6 years after the show was over. Every single one of them, their metabolism slowed drastically, even 6 years after the show. And it was interesting because it didn't matter how much exercise they still did. So you had the ones who were still exercising like crazy and the ones who weren't doing it at all anymore. All of them, their metabolism slowed like this massive degree. Wow. Also, almost all of them put the weight back on. There were a couple that didn't, but those ones were even in the same bad shape as the others as far as metabolism. So they had to constantly be eating less and less and less and less to be able to keep the same weight, because their body is going into starvation mode more and more and more and more, saying we got to hang on to every bite she puts into us because she's going to starve us. Really, really interesting to me. Yeah. So, and like I said, it was regardless of whether they had put their weight back on or they hadn't, and it was regardless of how much exercise they did. And the study actually tells you, because they did all the scientific weighing and measuring of the people before the competition and then right after the competition, they had great information to go from to compare to afterwards. And so they could tell you, like, the average competitor right before they started the competition burned something like, I'm guessing here, but it was something like 2,300 calories a day. I remember it was less than 25 and more than 2,000. That was how much the average person burned. After the competition, they were already down to like 1,900-ish a day. So they had stopped burning that many more calories, even though they were exercising like crazy now. Because they were starving themselves, their body was like, hanging on to it. And then the 6-year study afterwards was they were even less than that. So it was really fascinating. Yeah. Anyway, okay, so page 2, the dieting backlash. You know, we've got all these things we know about, right? Just thinking about a diet brings on this craving for all the foods we think we're not going to be able to have, right? I better go get Ben & Jerry's today because I'll never be able to have it again. 49% of the people who end a diet go on post binges, right? I know I sure did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I went on mid-diet binges.
Yep.
And then little or no self-trust around food. That, for me, that's one of the saddest ones to see, and I experienced myself because you learn that you cannot be trusted, right? Which is not true. Feeling that you don't deserve to eat because you're overweight. You ever experienced that?
Yeah.
You feel like that's why we eat in secret, right? because you feel like when you're with other people, they're just judging you because you're fat, you shouldn't be eating that. And then I don't know about you, but then I would feel resentful. And then when I'm in private, be like, well, I don't eat whatever I want. You can't, shortened diet duration, right? The diets get shorter and shorter and shorter because you can't do them as long.
Yep.
Last supper before a new diet, social withdrawal, sluggish metabolism, we already talked about, using caffeine to survive the day. Even when I gave up caffeine, I was using diet drinks like crazy, to try to not be hungry. And then eating disorders, right? So if you were to list just out of these ones, which ones would you say that you've experienced yourself?
All of them.
Yeah, I definitely all of them. Social withdrawal, I would go to stuff, but I, was trying to be a good little dieter while I was there. And I felt like I didn't enjoy myself at social functions because I was so worried about the food. So, but yeah, I related to all of them. And then it talks about the paradox. And this is on page 4, page 6. I love it. It goes through the list of the results that our nation has to show for all of our dieting. It talks about how obesity is higher than ever in adults and children. And the more our country has started dieting, the worse that's gotten. Eating disorders are on the rise. Childhood obesity doubled over the last decade. As of 2012, when this second edition came out. And then nearly 2/3 of adults are overweight or obese. And I was just going to see if I had written it back there. Okay, here was an interesting one. I thought I'd share a personal story with you. The one that says 1,200 tons of fat liposuction between 1982 to 1992. And it says that fat comes back just to a different part of the body. Well, I discovered that without any scientist telling me that, because I had a friend who used to cut my hair in Las Vegas. She was the cutest little petite thing you've ever seen. But she was obsessed. She thought that she had a little bit of fat she could never lose on her thighs and on her stomach. So, and I'm talking, she was petite. I'd be shocked if she was bigger than a size 4. She was tiny. But that bothered her, that no matter how much she exercised, she couldn't get rid of this little extra fat. So she went in and had liposuction, and she also had her breasts enhanced. And when I saw her, as soon as she was feeling back up to working again, she did look great. She looked like a supermodel. Her legs were tiny, her stomach was flat, her boobs were big. And she didn't have hips because she was the kind of person very thin, and so she didn't have the boobs, she didn't have the hips, right? When I went back to get my hair done the next time, which would have been about 6 to 8 weeks later, after that time, she looked ridiculous. And it was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen, because her body put the fat back on, even though she was not like a binger or anything that I'm aware of. But the body needs a certain amount of fat, and it just put it back on in other places. So it went to her butt. So now she had a bigger butt, which she had never had before. And it was way out of proportion for the rest of her body. And I was like, that backfired, I'm pretty sure. But that was an interesting lesson to me. I was like, her body needed to have that much fat. And it was like, well, if we can't put it back where it was supposed to be, we'll stick it somewhere else.
Wow.
Yeah, really sad. Anyway, and then the average person who diets gains back 10% more than when they were dieting. And that's how I dieted my way up 127 pounds pretty well. Let's see. Oh, I thought this was fascinating. On page 7, it said that teenagers who dieted had twice the risk of being obese if they dieted. And that was if their starting weights were the same. So you had all the high school kids, if they were the same weight, if they were dieting, they had twice the chance of becoming obese. And that's exactly what I did. Oh, I so wish I could go back in time.
Yeah.
Knew then what I know now. So before we go into chapter 2, tell me about, let's talk about the spiritual comparison. Okay. So we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, this makes sense logically. We're seeing that it's happened in our own life, but we have to kind of compare it with what we know is true and decide for ourselves if this is something we really, really believe, and if it's something that we want to adopt into our own psyche, right? So how does this line up with what you believe already about how your body is made? this stuff about the diet backlash, gaining back more weight than you lost. I mean, when you think about how God made our bodies, what do you think about it that way?
I'm not sure. Like, uh, I know that he didn't create us to go through all that stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think back about the people that lived on the earth, you know, hundreds of thousands of years ago. They just ate to live and to get through their day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure they ate when they were hungry and they stopped when they were full, just like babies.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel like God created us in that way. He didn't create us to eat all the crap and the eat whenever and whatever we want and
Mm-hmm.
go through all the trials of dieting and gaining and losing and feeling horrible about ourselves and all that kind of stuff. He doesn't want that for us.
Yeah. You never really read about in history any other period of time where so many people struggled with being obese.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just for our last days, right? And that's
Or
because,
even other countries
yeah,
aren't going through this.
unless those other countries are first world countries, right? Because first world countries have excess food.
Yeah.
And so that turns into the challenge. I mean, in the old days, the only people who were fat were like the kings, the queens, the governors, the rulers who had tons of money and food.
Yeah.
Everybody else had to do physical labor for a living, and they had to grow their food, and
Yeah.
there just wasn't a lot of excess, right? So
Yeah.
now think about, you know, I used to wish that my body could just burn whatever I put into it constantly, that I could just eat a cheesecake and it would be burnt and be gone. But now think about it. If our life changes, if we go to the point where we're not getting excess food, where we somehow are cut back, we wouldn't want our body to do that. You would want your body to say, oh, they don't have a lot of food, we're going to hang on to this,
Mm-hmm.
right? We want the metabolism to slow down. We want them to live longer. We want them to be able to, you know, we want it to, if there's extra, we're going to store it because you might need it later. Right? So all the things that we despise about how our bodies work really was designed because the Heavenly Father loved us and said, we want this body to be able to function well for many, many years. And it's the perfect system. It works exactly the way it's supposed to work. And yet, because we abuse it, we wish it worked some other way, right? And so I like to think about the fact that God made our bodies like that because that's what we need. That's what makes sense. And the only reason we struggle is because we abuse the system. And then we wonder why it doesn't work so great, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then of course we've talked about how does it line up with your own experience, right? We kind of talked about throughout the whole thing. Siri thinks I was talking to her for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for me, I totally dieted my way up 110 pounds. I know this is exactly accurate from my own experience. Anything you want to add there?
I can't think of it.
Okay. So what do you want to do with this new information just from this one chapter? How can it make a difference in your life this week?
I don't know, maybe just being aware and being aware of those symptoms, you know, it's okay. I know that I can have this food whenever I want, you know, I think the Last Supper is probably like the biggest thing that, you know, what I went through, which I'm still, you know, I still have to remember that.
Yeah.
No, okay, I can have that. And I think I told you this in my text. I find I want to eat less now so I can eat again sooner. It's like, oh, I want to eat again because I want to eat more often. I don't want to go all day without eating.
Especially when you've stopped enjoying whatever it is you're eating. Because my thing was like, let's say I'm having the Costco chocolate muffin. Everybody loves a chocolate Costco muffin, right? And if I got halfway through and my body starts going, I'm not tasting it as much and it's not as good, my brain would be saying, no, we don't get Costco chocolate muffins all the time. You need to eat this, right? You need to enjoy the rest of it. You can't just like give it away or throw it away or do whatever with it. And now my mentality has shifted to, okay, I'm not enjoying it as much. And this Costco muffin is awesome. So I'm going to save it so I can enjoy the rest of it. Instead of just like snarfing the rest of it and saying I got to eat it, I want to enjoy it, and I'm not enjoying it anymore as much. So I'm going to stick this in the Ziploc, and I'm going to threaten my kids with their life if they touch it. And I'm going to say, this is the other half of my muffin. I'm eating this later. Don't touch it. And then, 2 or 3 hours later, when I get hungry, I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to have, and I'll go get that muffin, and then I can really enjoy it. Or sometimes I'll surprise myself. And when I'm hungry again, I'll say, oh, I want that chocolate muffin. Then I'll think, oh, it actually doesn't sound good right now. Oh, weird. And then something else will sound good. But the great thing is I've given myself permission to enjoy everything I eat. And so every opportunity to eat is a positive experience. Mm-hmm. A friend of mine, somebody that I mentored through food stuff, has decided to go with a diet again. And they posted something on social media the other day. And I wanted to go hug them because they had a diet brownie in one of like a cardboard warmed up in the microwave kind of thing with a little bit of fat-free whipped cream. And they were saying, I'm so grateful that I can still have my chocolate every day and I can still do whatever. And I want to go hug her and say, that is not freedom, sweetheart. I have eaten more cardboard brownies out of my life. I would way rather enjoy a real brownie when I want one. And then I don't want them all the time. But when I ate like that, in fact, the way I lost 40 pounds after my first daughter was born, went back to my normal weight that I'd had before that, but it was severe dieting. And I remember just being obsessed with buying store-bought diet desserts and living off of them. And they weren't even that great. And I think of how many, I would eat 2 or 3 a day trying to get my sugar fix because they didn't taste that great. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would have had the same or less number of calories had I just had a good one and enjoyed it, Anyway, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the next time you're tempted to ignore hunger because you think I want to lose more weight, just remind yourself that's just slowing everything down, right? Let your body trust you. Okay. Chapter 2, what kind of eater are you? Okay. I thought this was fascinating. A lot of people are still dieting and don't know it. You hear all around you, oh, well, it's not really a diet. This isn't a diet. I'm just, and I like that they kind of go through, okay, what's really a diet? Do you have any like leftover like diet rules that you've adopted into your own gut? Like, they give the example, thou shalt not eat after 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. or any of those, or gluten's bad for everyone, or the hungrier I let myself get, the more weight I'm going to lose. Do you have any of those?
I don't know. Not any of those that you mentioned. I can't think of anything. Maybe as we keep talking, I'll think of something.
Yeah, or pay attention if you notice things pop up in your head and challenge them and say, is that true or is that just something I still believe from someone?
I do have something, but I don't know if this is a fact or if it's a belief that I have.
Okay.
But I was going to ask you this. Do you eat breakfast even if you're not hungry? Because it's my belief that our bodies need fuel in the morning to, work and do things. So what is that? Is that a myth or is it fact?
That's a great question. So in this book, the nutritionists always say a good rule of thumb is if you're not hungry, don't go more than 5 waking hours without eating, right? So that's talking about waking hours because your liver can only store food for so long and then you need fuel. So they're saying if you're not hungry and it's been 5 hours, eat. So when we wake up in the morning, oftentimes it takes a while for our body to kind of get moving, get revved up. But it's been 8 hours since it's been eating. So you kind of have to judge based on my understanding of way is to judge based on what is going to work for you. Oftentimes I eat when I'm hungry, but that's because I know it won't be long until I'm hungry. I don't go a huge long time without being hungry. like this morning, I think I ate just a yogurt on my way out the door to go to the gym. So it wasn't big, but I knew I was a little bit hungry. I was going to be hungry, so I did eat that. If I would say kind of the same principle goes, you feel free to wait until you're hungry, but if it's a long time before you're hungry, eat something because your body needs it. Yeah. Okay. Oftentimes I'll find just drinking my big glass of water with my vitamins or whatever I'm taking in the morning will kind of get things moving anyway. But yeah, I think it's a matter of remembering to care for your body.
Yeah.
So if you know your body needs food, give it food.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, good question. Okay, so the eating personalities, they gave the careful eater. That was the one who, in fact, just for fun, let's just check them off instead of waiting to the end. Let's just check off if we're one of these people, because I think I'm everybody. I'm just about everybody. Okay, so the careful eater is the one who does like extreme scrutinization of nutrition labels, what goes into food at restaurants, etc. Right? I have to say I'm not really that person, but I have been that person in the middle of diets before.
Me too. I think I was a lot of these in the past, but not anymore.
Yeah.
Now I'm the emotional one, but
yeah.
Like you said, I have been a careful eater, but
yeah, and it was simply for the process of trying to lose weight.
Yep.
The one I really recognized on the careful eater one was where they said saves calories or food all week for their weekend splurge.
Yes.
I did that religiously because I wanted a chance to binge, really. I wanted a chance to overeat sometime. And it's really kind of a relief to not feel like, because I felt like I was missing out all week. So now here was my big chance to not miss out. And now I feel like I'm not losing out ever. So there's no need to do, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. There is a great example of the best example of the careful eater I can think of in my life is I have a sister-in-law who she would never say she's on a diet, but she is obsessed with nutrition and her kids shouldn't eat sugar and, you know, everything's homemade and everything. And she's very healthy, but it was so interesting because her kids were not allowed to have sugar when they were young at all. And whenever they were around it, they could not stop eating it. They were obsessed. And so they'd come to our house. We had them over for a sleepover one time. And I took all the kids to the grocery store and my little nephew was probably 4. And I said, okay, all of you can pick one candy bar for a snack while we're watching the movie. And he said, what's a candy bar? And all my kids fell over laughing. They were like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And then one time we took them out for ice cream when we were visiting them. And the parents weren't there. It was just us and our kids. And we went to the Ghirardelli ice cream chocolate thing, whatever. And all my kids about halfway through their sundaes were like, I'm full. And they left it. And those kids finished all theirs and all my kids because they just never got sugar. And I thought that was a really interesting thing to notice. Okay, the next one is the professional dieter, right? Also really careful, but with the intent to lose weight, not for nutrition. I would say that was more me when I did it on diets. I've never been I'm not on a diet and yet I'm completely obsessed with nutrition. Mine was always for the sake of losing weight.
Yeah.
Yeah. The unconscious eater, and that's the person who, you know, does other things at the exact same time. And they give the examples of the person who just can't resist the food because it's there. That was me. The waste. Did you do that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. The waste not unconscious eater, meaning, you know, hey, I paid for that. I can't throw that away. Yeah. The emotional unconscious eater. That was me big time.
Yes.
Big time. And it says, you know, uses food to cope with emotions, especially uncomfortable emotions. Often is a symptom of a deeper issue. And that's when I strongly suggest people use a therapist of some kind or a coach or whatever it takes to get to the bottom of what the emotional issues are. Because I didn't make progress until I did that. Yeah, definitely an unconscious eater. All right. And then, of course, we get to the intuitive eater finally. And marches to their inner hunger signals, eats whatever they choose without experiencing guilt or ethical dilemma. Did you know people who do you know that's automatically like this? Didn't have to try.
My husband, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my friend Tara. Yeah, I would watch them and I'm like,
Who
Right.
are
It
you?
didn't even compute to me. Like I didn't even comprehend
Yeah.
the way of eating.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yeah.
And it's so funny if it's so foreign to you, and then it's very foreign to them how you eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. They can't imagine why it's so difficult.
Right.
Yeah. So interesting. They talk about it being like toddlers. We've talked about that before. I loved on page 15, it talks about how school age children have the innate ability to regulate their eating according to what their bodies need for growth. And this is studied, right? This is proven that preschool age kids just automatically do it.
Yeah.
And I liked that it said it varied widely day by day. So one day they might be eating lots of healthy stuff or whatever, and some other day they ate nothing that was healthy. Or
Mhm.
they might eat a lot on one day and a very little on another day, and they don't care. They don't think about some allotment of calories or points or fat grams. They're just, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. Don't you notice you have days when you are so much hungrier than others?
Mhm.
Oh, I totally do. And that's why I worry about people who say, if you say, well, I'm going to eat 3 times a day and here's my exact meal I'm going to eat and I'm not allowed to eat something else. I'm like, okay, what about when you're just starving though?
Yeah.
Or what if you're not hungry? Like, what if it took a lot less to fill you and you've still got food left on your plate that you're allotted to eat?
Mhm.
Well, if you're in a diet, you always eat that
Mhm.
because you're not allowed to eat anything else. So it's like, oh, I'm licking the plate, right? If the cardboard has 0 points, I'm eating it
I
because,
had one of those days yesterday. I was just all afternoon, and I actually was hungry. I was feeling hungry. I'm like, is this right? I kind of had to think about it. And then I started my period today. I'm like, oh, that's why.
yeah. But isn't it so hard to trust yourself?
Yeah.
It's hard to trust that I'm just making
Yeah.
this up because I want to eat.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's so funny when you take that dare and say, okay, I'm hungry, I'm going to eat. I'm just
Mhm.
going to do it. I'm just going to trust myself and do it. Pretty soon you really do trust yourself because the next day it's not the same.
Right.
And you just kind of get to that point where, like, if your kid came to you every 2 hours all the time saying they were starving and you just fed them a huge meal and they're just always doing that, you wouldn't trust them.
Mhm.
You'd be like, I don't know if you're really hungry or you just want the cookies on the cupboard.
Yeah.
Right. But when they just come to you when they're hungry, you're just going to feed them every time because oh, they're genuinely hungry. Even if it was an hour ago they ate, they're hungry, whatever. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the point you want to get to, right?
Mhm.
And then I also thought it was really interesting that it said when the parent interferes, and this was study based too, when the parent interferes, the problem gets worse, not better.
Mhm.
And the more their food is restrained, the more likely they are to be obese. I thought that was fascinating. And then when parents back off, kids usually eat less or eventually eat less. Um, and then they summarized on page 16, I really like where it said, the more you go outside of yourself to judge your eating, the more out of tune you get with your intuitive eater. So if you're judging how successful you are by the scale or by, what somebody else tells you should be eating or shouldn't be eating, whatever, the more outside of yourself you get, the harder it is to become an intuitive eater. And the more you can try to trust yourself, the quicker that process goes. Like I said, I wish I had dove all in 20 years ago and said, I'm going to give this a year and see how it goes. And instead I was like, you're telling me it might take how long to lose this weight? It might take, and now, I weighed a ton more than I did back then because I was so obsessed with it being fast.
Okay, I have a question about the scale.
Uh-huh.
So, the diet, well, I don't know. There's lots of different philosophies on the scale, but for me, getting on the scale means, that number and I'm fat or whatever. But also, I had a friend that was like, you should get on the scale every day and you should look at that number and think in your mind that's a fact. It's just a number. It's just 160 whatever balloons, or it's $160, or and so you're training your mind, just that's a number. But at the same time, getting on the scale is just like, oh my
What,
gosh, your
what
weight
feels
going up.
true
So
out
what
of
do you do?
so take all those, still both those points of view and decide which parts of them are true. So tell me what parts of those feel right.
um okay, so not getting on the scale.
Okay. What about it? What about that feels true?
um I don't know. Give me one.
When would staying off the scale be a good idea?
Always.
Okay, so if I want to know how much my 8-month-old grandbaby weighs at the doctor's, we should tell her we're never weighing her.
Oh, okay. I thought personally.
Well,
Okay.
the
Well,
same would
yeah.
apply to you.
So for my mother-in-law, we want her to get on the scale because she's down to 110 pounds with her brain cancer and she needs to eat. So we want her to get on the scale because we need to know where she's at because she needs to be gaining weight. So
Okay.
that's a good thing. She needs the scale.
Okay. So when is staying off the scale a good idea?
When you are looking at the number on the scale and thinking you're fat, that's not a good thing.
Okay, so when you're using it to beat yourself up,
yeah,
that's a problem.
Yes.
Right? Okay, so we can definitively say that is the truth. When you're using the scale, the numbers on the scale to beat yourself up, not a good idea to get on the scale. Okay, any other time when it's not a good idea to get on the scale?
I don't know.
Okay, how about when you're using it as the kind of justification that you're good?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, when you're losing weight, you think, oh, yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting how we, if we're using it as our proof that we have worth or that we are worthless.
Yes. Okay.
Problem, right? Because the truth is, you could be, they give the examples in here. I don't know if we've gotten to that part yet, but they get the examples of clients that they have that are doing great. They're 3 months in and they're listening to their body and they're enjoying their thing and they're having all this progress. And then they sneak on the scale for some reason and they give it up because they're like, I should have lost a lot more weight by now. Yes. Right? Hey, that's a problem.
Yes.
At the same time, though, I know people from eating disorder group days that, they were told never get on a scale. And when you go to a doctor's, you get on backwards and blah, blah, blah. And that's great. These people were so severely anorexic. Some of them were near death and having heart issues. And it was very serious. But at some point, I don't know if that's 10 years into their progress or 20, I don't know what that would be. I'm not their therapist. But at some point, you also don't want to be terrified of a scale.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want to be like, this is running my life. If you go to a doctor and you accidentally, maybe the person says your weight out loud, they weighed you, didn't know you didn't want to know it, and they tell you your weight. Should your life fall apart because you figured out how much you weigh?
Right.
So you kind of have to find that both of those ways of looking at things. I should never get on the scale, or you should get on every day and not have it be a big deal. There's truths to both of those. Right? It'd be nice if you could get on the scale and it didn't have any emotional impact on you. But if it is having an emotional impact on you, it's just a number on a scale. And it weighs every part of your body, including water and, salt and bone and muscle and, so we give it way too much power. We have to take the power out of the number. And we can't go around letting anything control us, whether it be a scale and the number telling us whether we have worth or not, or whether it's somebody saying, you should weigh yourself every day or you should never weigh yourself. Personally, so the book says, give it up for now. I don't think that they probably think that's a forever thing.
Okay.
Right? That's not what I think it's a good idea to stop relying on the scale in our lives.
Yeah.
But I also think I want to be free from being controlled by anything. So if I get on the scale and it says something, I would like my brain to go, yeah, and that has nothing to do with my worth. Yeah. It's feedback. But that takes a lot of work. So I would say follow what the book says as closely as you can, because that's what's proven to be successful. And if you know that it is messing with your day, I would avoid it. And I would try to judge yourself. Try not judge yourself, but try to judge how this is working based on how do you feel?
Yeah.
How do you feel physically? How do you feel emotionally? How do you feel spiritually? But also don't be so paranoid about it that if you find out what you weigh, that it blows your entire life.
Okay.
Because the truth is, this is a slow process. But the truth is, even every moderate diet tells you, average weight loss is a pound a week. But none of us are hoping for a pound a week. All of us are hoping for a minimum of 2. And, if we end up with extra, people are crying because they lost half a pound. And like, that's exactly what they told you should be losing every week, So we do get obsessed with it. And I think that that's something we have to be very careful not to focus on right now, especially if you're trying to put the weight on the back burner. But tell me what kind of, are you okay if we go a little bit late?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me what happens in your mind when you think of not getting on the scale.
Well, my first thought when you were talking about it is, I know if I'm gaining or losing just by the way I feel and the way I look. So I feel like I don't need the scale. But then my mind goes, but it doesn't matter, if I'm gaining and losing. But I can tell by the way I feel. And I have been feeling good lately, spiritually, emotionally. And I've been gaining weight too. So I know that, it can all go together. Because I am finding peace. Like you said, I had a good week. I feel really good and things are going well. And I'm gaining weight. So.
Okay. And so part of it is going to be exercising faith in this way of eating, and that other people have found success before we find our own success with the scale, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, that thought of, well, don't weigh yourself always brought on this fear of, but I don't trust myself. I might feel like I'm doing great. And what if I'm really doing crappy and I'm really putting on weight? So I need to get on the scale to prove to myself that this works, right? I need to get on the scale to prove that I'm not screwing it up, is where my fear would go. And so I totally get that. But just remember, we're working on trusting ourselves, and we're thinking long term, right? When you first start this, if you're, craving brownies for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, maybe the scale will go up a little bit. But logically, we know darn well that that's not how we gain this weight. We didn't gain this weight by eating when we were hungry and stopping when we had enough. We gained it by eating way past that, right? So I know for a fact, logically, that if I follow this plan, there's no way your body's going to stay as heavy as it is. Right? If somebody else is kind of at a normal area weight, sometimes that can be even harder for them, because their body might want to put on a little more weight if they've been dieting, and that can be hard to accept. I told you about my good friend Cindy, and she had to accept that she needed to be 10 pounds heavier than she wanted to be. But now that she's long past that, she's completely happy with her body and comfortable with that number, and not a big deal. But at the time, that was terrifying to trust that, right? Because, when they tell you what size jeans you are, they don't care if it's healthy or not. They just want you to be in smaller size jeans. No, really good question. Probably one of my favorite things on this chapter is on page 17 and 18. That quote that says, it starts on the very bottom paragraph of 17 and goes over the page. It says, we have found that establishing nutrition or healthy eating as an initial priority in the intuitive eating process is counterproductive. Okay, so notice they're not saying they're never going to talk about it or that it's not important. They're saying to start there, it doesn't work. In the beginning, we ignore nutrition because it interferes with the process of relearning how to become an intuitive eater, right? It interferes with the process. And it says, nutrition heresy? No. It's possible to respect and honor nutrition. It just can't be the first priority when you've been dieting all your life. Or look at it this way. If you have focused on all your attention on nutrition, has it helped? The most nutritious eating plan, and then it says absolute, can become embraced as another form of a diet. So I think it's hard for people to have that trust that this process is going to work, but it's now, been going for 23 years. Almost 24 years, and has thousands and thousands of everybody getting on board saying, yeah, this really is the healthiest. I hate that my computer does this. I silence my phone, and then it comes through my computer, and I don't know how to get it to stop doing that. Anyway, so it's got the little quiz on page 19, but I think we kind of know what kind of eaters we are already. We've done this a lot. So now thinking through, let's compare this to what we know about God, about our purpose for being here. What would you say, if Heavenly Father could show up right now and say, Mitzi, here's the vision I have for you. And, here's the relationship with food and with yourself that I want you to have. How would he summarize that in a couple sentences?
I don't know. I think he would say that it doesn't matter what you look like or how much you weigh, that I love you and you're important and you're beautiful, and I don't know, something like that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He would reiterate your worth at any size. And then he would also say, I want you to be free from this obsession with food.
Yeah.
Right? I want you to live your life. I want you to be free to serve and be happy and enjoy your family. And I got other stuff for you to work on. You got other garbage waiting for you. Right? But I think he'd say, I want you to not have to worry about this anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's totally what he'd say. And he doesn't want us obsessed with it for the rest of our life. And yeah, I think that's a total waste of the life he gave us. Mm-hmm. So what I want you to ask you, and there's probably no great answer today, but can you imagine yourself becoming an intuitive eater again? You were once. Can you imagine it?
Absolutely.
So maybe that's one of the things you can think about when you're playing the game and you're thinking about, these positive affirmations. Maybe just imagining that you are an intuitive eater again and what that looks like, what it could look like for the next hour. Don't worry about if you can do it for the week. Worry about if you can do it for the next hour.
Okay.
Sometimes for the next 5 minutes, right? Can I sit down and just taste everything I'm eating right now? And every time you do, you're putting that marble on the hill and rolling it in the new path.
Okay.
Every single time. So what one thing can you do this week, you think, that would help you start to picture yourself as an intuitive eater again?
I haven't been very good at praying for help.
Mm.
I think I'm going to do that throughout the day. I'm good, in my morning and my night prayers, but just throughout the day, I just don't even think about doing that.
Okay, cool. Can you think of something that would help you remember?
I could put that ring back on.
There you go. Yep, moving it to the wrong finger. So irritating, isn't it?
Yeah. Or I'm not good at praying for meals when I'm by myself. So maybe I can do that before I eat when I'm just by myself.
Oh, that's a good idea. And keeping in mind that it's not just about, help me eat only as much as I'm supposed to, and help me. That's how I was used to be in the diet world. And now I'm like, help me enjoy this. Help me be thankful for it. Help me be mindful of it. Help me to treat my body well.
Yeah.
I love the affirmation. I shared on Facebook. I don't know if you saw it. I was sharing some of the affirmations I like a lot. And the one that's really been sticking in my head the last 24 hours or 48 hours is, I trust God, I trust my body, and I trust myself. Mm-hmm. I like that. I think that's kind of the ultimate goal, isn't it? I trust God, I trust my body, I trust myself. Because if we get to that point, then that really is having peace. I like that too. All right, let me show you the food for thought today. Can you see this?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Let me expand that. Okay. So we started doing the book. I put up this quote on here: stop asking how long is this going to take and start asking how far can I go? Because that's the real challenge with intuitive eating. We want that immediate fix. We want to be skinny as quick as possible. And that's so hard to get away from. At least it is for me. Yeah. So here's some things that can help you make some regular progress this week. Think about journaling your feelings about where dieting has gotten you in the past. So if you find yourself really struggling with, can I do this? Is this just another diet? Remind yourself, okay, where's dieting gotten me in the past? What are your reasons for wanting to become an intuitive eater rather than just skinny? And your reasons for wanting to learn to trust that the way God made your body can be trusted and that you can be trusted, right? I wanted to finally get to that point because I couldn't stand the anxiety of going around freaked out all the time and not trusting myself. The next one, if you haven't already, take some time to discover what kind of eater you are or have been before beginning this program. I think you've already done that. Take the quiz on page 20 to discover the areas of your eating that can benefit from more growth on the path to intuitive eating. That's that quick little quiz there. And then as you prepare to discuss chapter 3 next week, and next week, I think we're going to cover only chapter 3 because it really covers a lot. It summarizes all the principles of intuitive eating. So I think that's going to be pretty intensive. Be mindful this week of where your strengths are and where you feel the strongest need for growth is in regards to the 10 principles of intuitive eating. Because you may find some that you're like, that's pretty easy for me. And others are like, I can't even imagine being able to do that. So just kind of pay attention as you read it. And then what can you do to strengthen your faith in yourself and your ability to listen to your body? What can you do to strengthen your faith in God and the way He designed your body? And what is one thing you can focus on this week that would make a tremendous difference if it became a habit? So just one little thing that if you did it as a habit the rest of your life, what could you do this week that would make a big difference? Okay. So yeah, lots to look at, lots to think about. I hope you enjoy the book. I really think you're going to love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just makes sense. And the more you read about other people's successes and the more you see yourself on the page, the more you realize, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
This is just a part of what needs to happen.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any more questions for me?
Nope.
Okay. If you need me throughout the week, you can call or text anytime. I'll be at my daughter's, but it'll be pretty, just taking care of her and stuff. So feel free anytime. And then it will be here on Monday, even though I'll be doing it from her house.
Okay.
And I hope I will have somebody watching the baby. If not, you may see my cute little grandbaby playing in the background. But that would probably be a good thing, and you should pay me extra for that.
Actually on Monday, I don't think I can do that. My kids have the day off because it's Veterans Day. And Dawson has a doctor's appointment at 9:15 my time, so 10:15.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if we can see if something works for Julie. We could change the time, or you want to just keep it the way it is, or.
Okay, well, if she can make it, we can always record it and you can watch it, and you can always call and talk to me too. So okay. That's not a problem. So let's find out what's going on with her. We'll keep touch. And worst case scenario, you can watch it later and we can be texting and emailing each other on whatever you need.
Okay.
If for any reason she can't make that time too, then maybe we can just think of what time works and rearrange it. Okay. Chicago's an hour later than even here, so I just have to remember that when I'm scheduling.
Okay.
But okay, so we'll make it work somehow.
Okay. I can do it earlier that day too.
You can do it earlier?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll see. Where normally, I mean, the goal is to have so many people in the program that wouldn't even work, but there's 2 right now, so we might have some flexibility. So I'll see what we can do.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.